back to the Friday Five here on the Agent Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Ruppel, and this is our weekly list of 5 things you should know about. Some weeks there's just not much to report, but this week, well, between the holiday last week and the passing and signing of the 2025 federal budget reconciliation bill into law, well, there's quite a bit to talk about, and definitely more than we can fit into one episode. I think that's an important way to preface today's installment. There's a lot included in the big, beautiful bill, as they're calling it, so we can't possibly touch on everything in today's episode. This is the first of our reporting on this legislation, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about it over the coming weeks. We were loosely keeping tabs on potential inclusions in the bill, but we haven't reported too much speculation, mainly because a lot can change from proposal to actual legislation. Huge shout out to our ACA copywriter, Emily, for help in that arena. She sent over a tracker from KFF that we will be linking to in the episode notes. KFF has been keeping a running list of provisions in the House and Senate versions of the bill, documenting how both of those versions differ from current law. That was a super helpful resource for me with the sheer amount of changes to legislation. I'd also like to mention there are a lot of tax implications in this particular budget reconciliation bill. That's not normally the case, but with this being the first year of the second Trump administration, we're getting a mix of budgetary changes, implementation of new policy, and the renewal of expiring tax provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So for this episode, again, these are my first impressions, initial takeaways that stand out to me as being relevant to both you and your clients, and they cover quite the array of topics in our industry. But we have to start somewhere. So coming in at number 5, let's focus on the ACA marketplace, specifically some changes between what was included in the budget reconciliation bill versus what was included in the 2025 ACA marketplace final rule. Most of these changes revolve around timing. The budget reconciliation bill introduced pre-enrollment verifications to the point that the House Ways and Means Committee noted that the new provisions, quote, effectively ends auto renewals, end quote. Essentially, individuals must submit information to verify their eligibility for premium tax credits prior to enrollment. The information to be disclosed includes household income, health coverage status, place of residence, family size, and that if they are a, quote, eligible alien, end quote, or in other terms, lawfully present in the United States. And there are a lot of subsections cited as far as who qualifies and who does not. Also, enrollment related. We knew from the final rule that we would be saying goodbye to the 150% FPL SEP for the upcoming ACA enrollment period. Beginning in October 2025, individuals enrolling in coverage via a non-qualifying life event special enrollment period will not be eligible for premium tax credits or cost-sharing reductions. And then the last notable shift has to do with ACA premium tax credit reconciliation. Prior to the final rule, individuals had to reconcile their subsidies on their taxes every 2 years. That will now happen on an annual basis. Per the new legislation of the budget reconciliation bill, a stipulation was added to recapture overpayment of premium tax credits. Beginning with coverage year 2026, if an individual goes to reconcile their premium tax credits and they miscalculated their estimations, they will be responsible for repaying the excess credit they received. Currently, there are repayment limits based on income level versus the federal poverty level. Those caps disappear for coverage year 2026. So regardless of the income level of the individual, they'll be on the hook for the difference between what they received and what they should have paid. Moving on to number 4, another ACA provision. This one I wanted to pull out and talk about on its own. In the House version of the 2025 Budget Reconciliation Bill, there were originally 2 provisions regarding individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements, or ICHRA. The House version of the reconciliation bill would have rebranded these as choice arrangements and expanded where individuals would be able to purchase them. The Senate version of the bill included no provisions regarding ICHRAs. The Senate version was then passed as is by the House on July 3rd. So for now, no rebranding for ICHRA, and individuals can only use them to purchase off-exchange plans. Initially, we were not sure how this legislation would go, and I do realize that we have not talked about ICHRAs here on the show before. That was largely because we were waiting to see how this legislation might turn out. So if that term is completely new to you, that is understandable. We will have some more information in the notes about those types of arrangements. And then I also want to mention that we have blog posts and episodes in the works to cover the basics as well as where independent agents fit into that equation. So keep your eyes out for that and make sure you're following along with the show. Number 3. A lot of extensions to tax laws in this bill, as I mentioned. And there's a new temporary senior deduction that can be taken at tax time. I wanted to make sure that I included this deduction in today's episode because there has been a lot of misleading conversation around it. I can see agents getting questions about this. So let's talk about what the new $6,000 senior deduction actually is. And this is all despite a press release from the Social Security Administration claiming that, quote, nearly 90% of Social Security beneficiaries will no longer pay federal income tax on their benefits, end quote. The legislation, in fact, does not do that. Thankfully, a correction from the SSA soon followed the first press release explaining that savings would be realized by, quote, providing an enhanced deduction for taxpayers aged 65 and older, ensuring that retirees can keep more of what they have earned, end quote. I do want to highlight here that this personal deduction is temporary, only in effect for tax years 2025 through 2028. And there are some financial stipulations around who qualifies. In the first version of the bill proposed by the House, the dollar amount was set at $4,000 per eligible filer. That was later bumped up to $6,000 in the final Senate version that the House agreed to and which passed along to President Trump. So that dollar amount, $6,000. To qualify for the senior deductible, a filer must be age 65 or older, have a modified adjusted gross income that doesn't exceed $75,000 for single filers and $150,000 for filers who are married filing jointly. And then the deduction is available to both itemizers and non-itemizers. Number 2 on our list brings us to health savings accounts. This is one of a few areas of the original legislation that had quite a bit of promise to it. Couple of proposals that have been floating around for some time. Unfortunately, most of them were scrapped in the Senate version of the reconciliation bill. But we do have 2 changes that are important to mention, one of which is a new opportunity for individuals to open an HSA. Health savings accounts are typically associated with high deductible health plans. Now, for those purchasing bronze and catastrophic plans on the individual market, Those plans are now being treated as high deductible health plans that can be paired with a health savings account. The reconciliation bill also addressed telehealth flexibility that had gained popularity after the pandemic but was set to expire. High deductible health plans are now permanently able to offer telehealth and other remote services as pre-deductible services and still be considered HSA eligible. And then in the cases where an individual might have an HDHP and other coverage offering remote care or telehealth services, those individuals will still be eligible to make and receive HSA contributions. Personally, I do have to say I was really rooting for gym memberships to be able to be covered by HSA funds. But that was one of many HSA-related provisions passed by the House and then nixed at the Senate level. And now, coming in at number 1 on our list, Medicaid. The 2025 budget reconciliation bill made quite a few changes to the Medicaid program. While we can't go into lengthy detail about all of those changes here, I do want to touch on the new requirements for those receiving and applying for Medicaid coverage. Beginning with redeterminations scheduled for 2027, the Medicaid program must conduct eligibility redeterminations at least every 6 months. Also set to begin as those new eligibility requirements take effect, new work requirements. States have the ability to put these requirements in place earlier if they so choose, but no later than December 31st, 2026. Eligibility for individuals aged 19 through 64 must show that the individual is either, quote, working or participating in qualifying activities for at least 80 hours per month, end quote. States can allow for the exemptions of, quote, certain adults, including parents of dependent children age 13 and under, and those who are medically frail from the requirements, end quote. States must verify that individuals meet those work requirements at least twice per year, and they must show that they've been meeting those requirements for at least a month prior to their application for Medicaid. Individuals who are denied Medicaid coverage or disenrolled from Medicaid coverage because of failing to meet work requirements will then become ineligible for subsidies on the marketplace. Also, beginning in coverage year 2027, retroactive coverage becomes limited to 1 month prior to the application for enrollees in expansion states and 2 months prior for enrollees applying for coverage in non-expansion states. Previously, retroactive coverage could be acquired for up to 90 days before the application date. A lot of changes coming to the Medicaid program, but the main ones for agents and clients revolve around eligibility, work requirements, verification, and reporting. Timeframes are tightening compared to what was previously in place. More requirements are necessary to gain coverage, and reporting on those requirements will happen more frequently. Providing all of that information to your clients upfront is going to be crucial. And again, this is just my first glance look at what is admittedly a very large piece of legislation. There are many, many other provisions outlined in the budget reconciliation bill, some of which we've talked about before, some of which we've yet to get into, and others that are too politically charged for comment. We are still in the very early stages of this legislation. I have to surmise that there are potential lawsuits brimming because I feel like there are always lawsuits brimming when policy changes. But there's also a need for some time to step back, digest, and then come back to the new provisions and get a little more granular. We've got the high-level view. But in the next few weeks, we'll be circling back to talk about the impact of the reconciliation bill in more detail. If you'd like to hear an episode focusing on a particular topic, maybe you're interested in just the Medicaid changes. Maybe you'd like to really get in the weeds on the ACA side. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. We love hearing your feedback, and we can certainly put together an episode around either one of those topics. We have seen a lot of changes come through in the past few weeks as the new administration has been setting up shop and implementing their agenda. We do our best to keep you as informed as possible as these changes are happening, so you can do the same for your clients. I think more than ever, being able to communicate with your clients is key, focusing on that relationship that you have with them. Circumstances in the industry are going to change, and as I mentioned, we have seen that quite a bit lately. As agents, we can't control the fact that eligibility and availability of coverage change. But what we can do is listen to the concerns of our clients, continue to work with them to find coverage solutions, check in with them, and also keep ourselves apprised of how we can position ourselves to better help our clients. Here at the Agent Survival Guide podcast, our goal is to be a resource for independent agents. Whether you're prepping for busy season, sifting through new legislation, or trying out some new marketing ideas, we are here for you. And if you have questions along the way, you can always send them in to asgpodcast@ritterim.com. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay healthy and stay safe out there, and we will see you next week. The Agent Survival Guide podcast is a production of Ritter Insurance Marketing, an integrity company. This episode was written and produced by me, Sarah Ruppel. Script editing and fact check by Tina Lamoureux. Podcast design by Urban Rivera. Follow along with our show wherever you like to listen.